There really isn't anything special about the particulars of each synth patch if you don't understand the building blocks you need to create your own. I'd like to cover what I've deemed to be the most relevant areas of focus on a synthesizer. I'll cover oscillators, filters, envelopes, LFOs, and effects, while discussing throughout each which settings to apply to get close to no such thing sound. I'll also talk about layering and explain what I've layered in this project and why, as I believe this is a commonly overlooked aspect when creating different types of synthesized sounds. I'm going to be using Serum for this demonstration as I like the intuitive visual layout, such as the ADSR envelope, and I'd imagine most people will have access to this synth. Creating no such thing like sounds in Serum I'd imagine will be easier for everyone to get started. It's also one of the most popular synths on the market currently and is extremely versatile. I actually even designed most of my own drum hits in here. Before we jump into the parameters on Serum, I'd like you to firstly understand the concept of wavetable synthesis, which is the category of synthesis Serum harnesses. You guys on Live 10 will have the wavetable synth, so I'm hoping even if you don't have Serum, everything I'm going to be explaining can still be put to good use. Some of you may be thinking, wait, hold on, you're mainly using Vere in this project, why the switch to Serum or Wavetable? Well, apart from the popularity and accessibility of Serum and Wavetable, I'm actually using Wavetable oscillators in Vere. It has nowhere near the selection Serum does because it's more of an extra than a core feature, but I found Wavetable synthesis to be the best option for recreating no such thing sounds. But first, a quick overview and history of Wavetable synthesis. Between digital samplers and subtractive synthesizers lie wavetable synthesizers. Digital samplers are intended to reproduce a sound that ranges from a few to many seconds or more in length and provide some facility for manipulating that sound. Digital sampling requires fast access to the data required for playing back a recorded sample immediately on request, such as pressing a key on a keyboard, and is therefore usually stored in entirely random access memory or RAM. When RAM was expensive and available only in much lower capacities than what we are accustomed to today, samples were shortened with low bit rates such as 8-bit compared with today's 16, 24 and 32, low sample rates and mono. An attractive alternative was storing and reproducing a single wave cycle that was very short in the range of milliseconds, therefore requiring minimal storage space and RAM, which is where Wavetable comes in. Sample-based synthesis was a technique that for the first time brought with it the allure of faithfully reproducing the sound of acoustic instruments. With the increase in drive storage space, RAM capacities and processor speeds, not to mention improved techniques for capturing and organizing samples, sample-based instruments increasingly approached an impressive realism. The trade-off, however, was limited facility for crafting the timbre into variations expected in musical performance. For anyone approaching synthesis with the goal of reproducing the sounds and subtleties of an acoustic instrument, it was still hard to beat what sampling had to offer. What was needed was having that realism coupled with the deep timbral control that was at the heart of synthesis. Addictive synthesis would evolve beyond its humble beginnings to address that need in a significant way. The next step was to start with a sample and not just play with its overall harmonic content, but to divide it into many slices over its duration and manipulate how and when the slices were produced. This is the basis of two similar but different forms of synthesis: wavetable synthesis and granular synthesis. Both wavetable and granular work on the principle of dividing up a sample into slices over time. With wavetable, the slices commonly referred to as subtables are relatively coarse older instruments would have 32 divisions over a sample's duration. Newer software-based instruments may go as high as 256. The slices of a granular sample are called grains and can be as small as 2 to 50 milliseconds each. As I've already stated, the two techniques share similarities, but there are distinct differences. However, I'd like to explore only wavetable in this tutorial. The term wavetable has been used as a label for different synthesis techniques, some more appropriately so and others, leading to confusion over what it is exactly. Some of the most common kinds include lookup table, vector synthesis, linear arithmetic synthesis, advanced wavetable synthesis, and granular synthesis mentioned earlier. Serum uses advanced wavetable synthesis according to their website. The concept of wavetable synthesis evolved from some of the previous implementations we just covered, namely lookup table, vector, and linear arithmetic synthesis into something more complex and useful for sound designers working on a DAW rather than on hardware instruments. In general, plugin instruments continue a trend of blurring the lines between the different synthesis techniques I've mentioned in this video, and Wavetable is among them. Advanced wavetable synthesis is not a common term in synthesis parlance, but one that we're using to describe the new advances in Wavetable that borrow much from what we will see had been the sole domain of Granular. Wavetable instruments still have Wavetable to use as a starting point, but a new function known as resynthesis allows importing your own samples that are divided into time slices called grains. The advantage here is that the grains are variable and start, end and loop points can be defined with the overall sequence or characteristics of granular synthesis, but with fewer and larger grains.